Yeah, I was sitting here reading a book, The Dialogue Method in Culture, Professor Muhammad Khalifa Hassan Ahmed. It starts off, talks about crisis of dialogue with the West according to the clash of civilization theory. It states after the attacks of September 2001, the relations between the Muslim world and the West had entered a new epoch. Actually, the entire world entered into this together. These events probably provided the contemporary historian with a new and important factor that divides the contemporary history into two eras. One preceded the attacks of September 2001 and the other followed them. Regarding the Muslim world, actually those attacks have created a political and religious tension with the West. Despite the prevailing spirit of dialogue between Muslim world and the West before the attacks of September 2001. These attacks almost aborted all the efforts exerted to establish dialogue between the Muslim world and the West throughout the second half of the 20th century. On the religious level, these efforts resulted in the Declaration of the Vatican in 1962 that determined the relations between Christianity and other religions, especially the religions or the religious relations between Muslim and Christians. Meanwhile, other political efforts have been exerted to improve Muslim relations with the West and develop new political relations. These relations had some positive sides to some extent, but preserve some of the negative effects of colonialism. Globalization created another tension at the cultural and economic levels. Consequently, the Muslim world had to convert to the free market system, although it was unqualified for this step without internal economic reform. Meanwhile, the Muslim world was required to maintain a political reform as a prerequisite for achieving the economic reform. Furthermore, the cultural reflections of globalization that have directly threatened Islamic culture and made the Islamic identity subject to reconsideration reminded us of the former cultural invasion practiced by the West, a new type of invasion not supported by military or colonial force, but occurs spontaneously as a result of economic globalization and the widespread of large number of intercontinental companies that monopolize most of the international trade and propagate the culture and values of the West that directly and forcibly threaten the Islamic culture and lifestyle. When I read that, it actually took me back to the economic relations between blacks and white here in America. And I was thinking about community invasion. I was thinking about certain Asian stores that are in the black community. It's like an invasion. Not to mention with the occupation of police force as well. But then it led me to read something from Chinka Diop, book Cultural Unity of Black Africa, beginning at page 91. He talks about the importance of the role of the economic relations between Egypt and Phoenicia must certainly not be underestimated in explaining the loyalty which seems to have existed between two countries. Also, the economic necessities that existed and how they regulated their relations between the two. I'm just trying to talk about the economic relations between, black and white here in America. The economic necessity must be understood and agreed upon, not be betrayed or not to be betrayed. How does economic necessity regulate the relations between invader and native, slave and master, merchant and farmer, north and south, east and west, country, community, nation and nation? First, what are the basic necessities? Food, clothes, shelter. However, that which is necessary is not always sufficient. You need a sufficient amount of food, clothes, and shelter. I remember Kwame Ture never said it better about culture. He said it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I mean, we can wear the attire and the clothes, on the outside, but it's necessary, but that's not sufficient because change, of course, takes place on the inside. Then this excerpt that I was taking from Diop book, then it becomes a thing of status. The result is development of economic relations becomes a thing of status, and he shows who controls, as I come to conclude, he or she who controls the status determines the extent of the relationship. I think that's key when you're talking about economic relationships or building economic relations, one with another, us with each other. For example, in 1880, as it pertains to the German American Jews, I believe I got this from out of Paul Robeson book. That was written, a book that was written about Paul Robeson. In 1880, as it pertains to the German American Jews, the Yiddish-speaking Eastern European Jews began immigrating to the United States. Henceforth, the American Jews were sympathetic and willing to help out financially. At the same time, they did everything they could to distance themselves from these so-called poor, uneducated new arrivals. The same applies with the newly streams of emancipated blacks fleeing to the north, and the mentality of the Northerners was to protect their status and felt pressure to do so as it pertains to their hard-won economic gains. And remember, Booker T. Washington appealed to the consensus of the people when it comes to economic relationships. The same mentality still applies today among blacks in the mentality of the Americans. The reaping of benefits of economic status and cultural and social prominence is the mentality of the American relations and in European relations around the world. The economic relations is a thing of status control and social prominence, also known as cultural hegemony. Sister Amin made that clear to me as well. But yet it is said to be known that Europe has no cultural foundation. The term is invented, then you will come to know about them. The economic relations necessities is a result of status control. If that position is accepted intellectually, socially, morally, and culturally as progress, then our labor is in vain. Then our relationship with one another is in vain. And we know that vanity is the enemy of consciousness. Jules Nyerere said this: the purpose of education is to prepare young people to live and serve society and transmit the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes of the society. Whenever education fails in any of these fields, there is social unrest, as you find people that their education has prepared them for a future which is not open to them. The point of expression is this about economic relations as it pertains to a thing of status control. And once the economic relations between black and white is not portrayed as a thing of status control, but as a thing of mutual power and mutual respect one for another. Needless to say, you and I know that the one who created the condition in which we are in would never change those conditions unless you or I change the position in the conditions ourselves by establishing mutual economic relationships one with another.